Hey guys, did you know that most of the book of Revelation actually took place in heaven? Let me show you what I'm talking about. When we come to the 4th chapter of Revelation, we see right here in the very first verse, it says, "After these things, I looked, and behold, an open door in heaven, and a form of voice I had heard sounding like a trumpet was saying to me, 'Come up here, and I will show you things that will take place after these things.'" Now, I know that this probably doesn't seem all that significant or all that surprising to some of you who have actually read this book, but believe it or not, this little passage right here, this first verse of the 4th chapter, actually sets the tone for the rest of the book. And believe it or not, you can't actually understand the book of Revelation until you understand this verse. And in today's video, that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's roll the intro and we'll go ahead and get started. Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. It's nice to see you again. If you're new here, let me take a couple of seconds to tell you about this YouTube channel. This is a Bible study channel. What we do here is study the Bible because we take the Bible seriously, and we seriously study the Bible. We talk about all different kinds of things, and when you click into the channel, you can find any topic that you want. My name is Jorden Clark. I publish a brand new video every single day, and I try to make these videos in as real time as possible. And what I mean by that is this: I publish the video and I record the video all in the same day. So for example, right now it's 2:25 p.m. This video is going to be posted at 4 p.m. So I'm recording it just a couple hours before. And the reason why I do it like that is just to kind of keep the community active and, you know, give you the opportunity to comment on a video and say, hey, I'd like for you to talk about this. And so there's one viewer that asked me a couple of weeks ago to start talking about the 7 seals in Revelation, which is a great topic because what we're doing this summer is we're spending the entire summer from June to August. That's 2020, 90 days. And we're talking about the end times. We're talking about the book of Revelation, the rapture, the second coming, and all that stuff. And so I told that person, I said, look, yeah, I'm definitely going to do a video on the 7 seals in the book of Revelation, but I want to wait till July. So today's July 5th. And I'm like, you know, all right, let's get into it. So we've already talked a lot about the first couple of chapters of Revelation in June. And so now we're going to just pick up in verse 4, which is why I showed you at the beginning of this video, chapter 4, because that's what we're going to be talking about. So when it comes to the book of Revelation, one of the things that you have to know about this book, it's very important to understand, is that when it comes to the interpretation process, you as the student of the Bible, and this goes for everybody, this is a rule for everybody, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, doesn't matter, everybody has to make this decision. And that decision is this: are you reading this book religiously with a religious belief, or are you not reading this book as a religious belief? What do I mean by that? Well, here's what I mean by that. In the religious sense, they say, the religious sense, you know, the actual religion, it states that this is a prophecy, it's inspired by God, and this is something that's absolutely going to happen in real life, and it doesn't matter if we can prove that or not, because this is 100% the very words of God. That's the religious sense, okay? The non-religious sense is pretty much the exact opposite of that. We don't know if it's inspired, we don't know if this is the word of God, we don't know if this stuff is going to happen, it's pretty much just a story, and it has lots of colorful things. Now, the reason why you have to understand this religious and non-religious element is because when you get into the actual literature, it is apocalyptic literature. So you've got some narratives that's going on, you've got a lot of symbols that's going on, you got a little bit of history that's happening, and so on and so on. There's a lot of theology that's happening as well. All of those things are still true. But the biggest element as the reader is you making the decision, am I reading this book religiously or am I reading this book non-religiously? And let me just tell you something. You have to make that decision. That's number one. Which way are you doing it? But also you have to make the decision on learning how to read this book both ways. You have to learn how to read this book religiously, and you must learn how to read this book non-religiously. Because both of those perspectives, taking them away, you know, reading it religiously and reading it non-religiously, is going to help you see all these different stuff and all these different things that are happening in the book. And it will pretty much just, you know, help you understand what's actually happening. So just understand that when you're reading this book, you have to ask the question, how am I reading this? How do I want to read it? Am I going to read it as a religion? Am I not going to read it as a religion? You'll see massive results when you decide to do that. So let's go look at this passage one more time and talk about it a little bit because it's really important. It's really cool. The book of Revelation is primarily structured around this passage right here and the very first verse of chapter 4. And the reason why it is structured around here, at least this is my opinion, not everybody's going to agree with this, but this is simply just my opinion here. He says, after this I looked, and behold, an open door in heaven. So he's in heaven, and he says, the former voice which spoke to me about the 7 letters, I mean, not the 7 letters, but the 7 churches that he sent the 7 letters to, that voice. He said, I heard it like a trumpet speaking to me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place after such things. And immediately I was in the Spirit. And he goes on to explain this stuff. And so this is very, very crucial to understand, because the book is actually telling us where he's at. So everything from here on out, right? Chapter 4 all the way to the end of Revelation. The whole thing from here on out. The setting is in heaven. It's number one. John, the guy on Patmos, the guy who's writing this, the guy who has this vision, John, whoever that is, he is in heaven in this vision, in this trance-like thing. So he has a trance. He tells us that in the first chapter. He writes some letters to some churches, and then he's taken up to heaven. So now he's in heaven. And as he's in heaven, he sees all these things happening. So he sees the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets and all these angels and all these creatures, and all this stuff is happening. And a lot of times it actually tells you the interpretation throughout the book. It says, well, here's what this means, and here's what that means, and here's what this means, and here's what that means. So interpreting the book in that sense is pretty easy. However, if you don't understand this verse, chapter 4, verse 1 of Revelation, you're going to miss the rest of the book. If you don't actually understand that this is happening in heaven, supposedly, whether or not that's a real heaven or an imaginary heaven, we don't know. We just know that it's taking place in heaven. So as this is taking place in heaven, you have to understand the stuff that he's actually seeing is not taking place here on earth. It's taking place in heaven. Okay, he's seeing these creatures, he's seeing these horns, he sees the great Babylon, he sees the beast, he sees the 7 seals. We'll read here later on in chapter 5, the 7 seals. He says there was one scroll and there were 7 seals on that scroll. Okay, and each scroll was broken, but they had to be broken by the Lamb who wasn't slain, who apparently is Jesus. So this book actually has a very high Christology, which is quite surprising. But the seals are broken in chapter 5, and it actually goes up, I think it goes up to chapter 8. But anyways, the point is that he's actually seeing this scroll in heaven. Okay, and as he breaks one of these seals, it crumbles apart, and it unleashes hell here, unleashes hell there. I mean, that's kind of the idea that happens. We'll talk more about that later on down the road, either this week or next week, or very soon, because it is July 5th. So pretty soon we'll be talking more about that as we go further down in this book. But I really want to place a lot of emphasis here on this idea of John being in heaven. All of these symbols that you're seeing, John himself apparently is actually seeing this stuff happen in heaven. So when you're reading about this creature, which we'll read here in chapter 4, if you read it by yourself, you'll find it. He sees these creatures and has all these eyes on them. Well, he's actually physically seeing that creature because that creature is in heaven. Now, is that creature actually here on earth? No, it's not. When you get to these beasts and you get to these horns, is that stuff actually here on earth as a beast and as a horn? The answer is no. When you see in Revelation where it talks about the great whore of Babylon, are you actually going to see a woman? Are you actually going to see some beast coming up out of the sea, the Atlantic Ocean or something? Is that really going to happen here on earth? The answer to that question is no. So it's very important to understand it. Why is it important to understand it? Well, because when you get out into the popular world and you see all these people talking about eschatology and the end times of the book of Revelation, the way that they read this book is they read this stuff and they forget that it's actually a vision. And it tells you here in verse 1 of chapter 4 that it's a vision that takes place in heaven. Okay, so all this is a vision. It's very important to understand what this is. It is a vision that someone is having while they're in heaven. God is showing them these things while he's in heaven. Okay, now these things may be translating down here to earth. That's typically what happens in apocalyptic literature, but not in the same way. Okay, so lots of times a beast represents a king or a kingdom, or the horn represents a king or a kingdom. Okay, and so, when it talks about a beast, it's probably talking about a kingdom or it's talking about a king, which is not actually a real beast. Okay, it's important to understand that. So as you're reading through this book, understand that these symbols are actually happening in heaven. The author of this book is actually seeing this stuff in heaven. Okay, and as he's seeing, he's just writing it down. Sometimes he interprets it, sometimes he doesn't. It's very important to understand that the setting of this story takes place in heaven. And until you understand that, you will never understand the book of Revelation. Listen, if you like this video, let me know in the comments below. If you did not like the video, tell me why you didn't like it. We're going to be talking a lot more about the book of Revelation here in chapter 4. We have a lot more stuff to go over, but this is just kind of like the, hey guys, let's kind of, ease into it, not too harsh, but just enough to kind of, pedal you along, because this is a pretty challenging book in certain areas. And there's a lot of disagreement among a lot of people. And so you got to be kind of careful of how you say stuff and so on and so forth. I have some more playlists up here if you want to go check them out. Don't forget to click the big red A, because when you do, you subscribe to the channel, you get a brand new video just like this every single day at 4 p.m. My name's Jorden Clark. Thanks for watching. As always, I will see you in the next video.